Thanks, Ken. Well, Juno Award-winning singer Elias Dummer joins me now to talk about the personal journey that he's been on, his musical career, and the importance of finding rest no matter what we're facing. Well, Elias, we're so happy to have you here co-hosting with us today. And
yes, it's an honor.
Great. Have this interview with you. Well, Elias, you've had an incredible musical journey with the City Harmonic and also as a solo artist. And of course, you know, you've won the Juno. All these really neat things have happened.
Yeah.
And
stuff you don't think is going to happen in your life.
Probably not.
Kind of comes along.
Yeah. And I was thinking about how, you know, if you go back to when you were younger, when you started to really have that connection with God and, you know, writing music, what would you say was a defining point for you?
Oh, man. I think music has such a powerful effect on us as people, right? Because we're human beings. We're not just brains on a stick or something. Yeah. We're people with feelings and bodies and all of the things. And music is uniquely able to, like, capture that whole person, you know? And so in prayer, it has always been such a powerful tool. For me in my own life and my own spiritual journey, I think as a teenager, even when I've had moments of doubt or moments of pain or moments of difficulty, at the end of the day, it's somehow those moments where the emotion and the idea and the reality and truth of what I believe God to be are met up at the same time. There's this one thing happening, and music just does that so well. Of course I go there.
Yeah, that's so neat. And, you know, you talked about your connection with God. Were you raised in a family that went to church or with people who followed Jesus?
Yeah, so I was raised in the church. My parents, I think, got baptized when they got pregnant.
So it was one of those. Baptized in the womb.
Yeah, I was baptized in the womb. And we were raised in church my whole life. And then somewhere around 12 or 13, I was playing a little bit of guitar already in our small little Baptist church in Hamilton. Started to involve me in the worship team, playing alongside guys, and then eventually leading at youth group and eventually leading at church. And one thing led to another, and here I am.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
What's that spiritual journey for you like when you are having those moments of worshiping God through music? What's happening in your heart and your mind?
Oh, yeah. Well, and you know, it's interesting because it changes, doesn't it, as you age? Like you start out and there's a lot of kind of pure, raw passion that's part of that. And of course that's focused on God, right? But you get used to some things. And over time, you say, oh, I'm starting to see now in this stage of my life how much the loving practice and habit of worship plays a role in shaping my instincts and how I treat my kids and how I treat my wife and everything else. And so I think for me, it's always centered in prayer. Yeah. It's always centered in, I'm doing this thing and connecting with God in all of these ways as a whole person so that my whole life can speak to the things that God is doing inside and in the world. And so I hope it's always that.
I love that. And, you know, I think sometimes we separate this concept of worship and we're like, okay, Sunday we're doing, you know, we go to church and we're going to do worship.
Yes.
And we will be you know, praising God in those moments.
Yes.
But the reality is what you're touching on here is that our entire lives should be an act of worship.
Absolutely. Our entire lives should be an act of worship, which also frees us up to be a little more normal and human about what happens on Sundays.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a sense in which like this is a human activity. It's just like the angels in heaven singing both to God and to each other. We're spurring each other on in this good and beautiful thing that we do together. And, you know, that allows us to be people in the process.
Oh, I love that. Yes, spurring each other on. What a difference it makes.
Absolutely.
Corporate worship and not just on Sundays, every day.
That's right. Yeah.
Worshiping God with our whole lives. That is so neat. You know, Elias, you as a solo artist, you've released two sort of sister albums. The Work Volume 1, The Work Volume 2.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about each of them.
Yeah, I mean, The Work is sort of a play on the idea of liturgy, right? I mean, we're writing corporate worship songs some of the time at least, and in a lot of ways that's a liturgy. That's the work of the people. And so these songs are sort of confessions of mine, the work that I'm doing, you know, in a sense, the work that God is doing through the Holy Spirit in my life, in my heart, and my soul. And so Volume 1 was really centered a lot in the period of time right after the band was ending, and I was trying to find a new way of doing this thing. Volume 2 was much more centered. It came out in 2022. So it was much more centered in the experience of the couple of years that preceded it. And all that meant. And I think the reality is we can sometimes, as Christians, we can sometimes be like ostriches. We stick our head in the sand and pretend that we don't see that it can be complicated to be a Christian in this century, in our context. And so I think Volume 2 is really speaking to the bittersweetness of being a faithful Christian in the world that we live in. It's a challenge, and that's okay. And so there's that sort of, good and tension that come with that. And I think that's just, a confessory prayer that reads just like the Psalms, I hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think your music does read like the Psalms in the fact that it is very confessional, and it helps each of us enter into our own confessions with God.
I should hope.
Yeah, that's your goal.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I hope so.
Yeah.
One of the songs that really has helped me is the Gospel is Rest. And that's a song that you wrote in Volume 2. And
Yes.
that was, I guess, out of the pandemic experience somewhat, or during?
Well, actually, before.
Okay, it was
so,
before.
Almost right before the pandemic, I was at a writing retreat. I'd been working too hard. I have a few things on the go. And I'd been working too hard and, was out on the road. And suddenly I found myself extremely dizzy. And it turned out that I had vertigo that lasted almost a year. And, they did all the tests and they have all these various attempts at diagnoses, and in all likelihood, it seems at this point that it was anxiety. And so I had essentially had a prolonged anxiety attack. And so attempting to recover from that is a whole thing, And so I've had to take the message of this song to heart in a big way. You can't be all the things, doing all of the things.
Yeah.
The gospel is rest. It's not on me to save the world. It's God's world.
Yes.
It's in Jesus' hands. And so it's on me to be faithful, to find peace and joy and wonder in the midst of all of that. And so that's kind of what the song is about.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because throughout the pandemic, the song was so needed. I felt, personally, a lot of the anxiety I had struggled with when I was younger came forward again in the pandemic, and being reminded that this is God's job, not mine. Right?
Absolutely.
To worship with my life, to actually, help people around me and change the world for the better. I think one of the ideas that we tend to struggle with as humans is we carry the burdens that are meant to be carried by Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and there's a degree of work ethic involved that I get. I understand it. But at the end of the day, being present to people and being kind and loving, peace, patience, joy, love, all of it is something that isn't just a thing of working harder. It's not hustle culture.
Yeah.
You don't win at the game.
Yeah.
You admit defeat and accept that you live in this life of love and joy and peace. And it's not that I'm doing it perfectly, mind you, but certainly try.
Well, we wake up and we try again every day.
We try
That's
again
how
tomorrow.
I feel.
Yeah.
And keeping our eyes focused on the cross and on who
Yes.
Jesus is, I find everything melts away. That's what I love about the Gospel is Rest. It just pulls me back to the focus on Jesus, and I'm like, okay, he's doing it, not me. It's really neat that you've been through this whole experience, and even the Juno that you won, like what an interesting experience. This year there are more people up for Junos, some of whom Brooke Nichols, she
really
was just on yesterday.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting. She's up for Contemporary Christian Gospel Album of the Year.
Yes, and I'm super proud of her.
I
It's
bet
amazing.
you are.
Yeah.
And you go way back with them.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. What's your hope for those Christian artists who are going to the Junos this year that, how they'll experience all of it?
It's an incredible opportunity. I mean, it often in Christian music, you struggle along and you don't know if it's connecting with people sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible honor to be out with people and realize, no, I'm part of this bigger picture. I'm part of culture.
Yeah.
In doing this, I'm part of the arts in Canada and have a unique role to play and a unique voice in that. It's really affirming. It's a beautiful thing.
Oh, I love that. Well, we're cheering Brooke on. We're cheering everyone in every category on. Elias, I'm so excited that we're going to be hearing you sing in just a moment. The Gospel is Rest. And thanks so much for this chat.
I'm excited. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, stay with us in just a moment. We're going to hear Elias sing.